It's 3 in the morning. You're staring at the ceiling. Your phone is face down on the nightstand because you read somewhere that looking at it would make this worse. It didn't help. Somewhere around 2, you woke up for no reason at all, and now your mind is running through every conversation from this week, every bill you forgot, every reason you might be sick. You feel broken. You feel like the only person on the planet awake right now, lying in the dark while the rest of the world sleeps soundly without you. But the real answer is far stranger. You are not broken. You're doing something almost every human who ever lived did, every single night for nearly all of human history. It just wasn't called insomnia. It was called night. For most of the time humans have existed, there was no electric light. No screens, no street lamps bleeding through curtains, no glowing clock on the wall telling you exactly how few hours you have left. When the sun went down, the world went black. And that blackness lasted 10, 12, sometimes 14 hours, depending on the season. Try imagining that. 14 hours of darkness every winter night for your entire life, with nothing to fill it but firelight, breathing, and whatever your mind decided to do. What would you even do with that much night? Here's where it gets strange. Historian Roger Ekirch spent years digging through old diaries, court depositions, and medical texts from before the industrial era, looking for clues about how people actually slept before clocks ran their lives. What he found wasn't one long block of sleep, the kind you're chasing right now and failing to find. It was 2. People would go to bed not long after dark, sleep for 3 or 4 hours, what they called first sleep, and then wake up. Not panic, not check a phone because there was nothing to check. Just wake up in the quiet, the way you woke up tonight. And then they'd stay awake for an hour, sometimes 2, right in the middle of the night. They'd pray. They'd talk quietly with a partner about ordinary things. Some got up and tended the fire or did small chores by candlelight. Some had sex. Some just lay there thinking the way you're doing now. Then, eventually, they drift into second sleep and wake again near dawn, rested. Ekirch found references to this rhythm scattered across centuries of writing, in letters and sermons and novels, almost always treated as completely unremarkable, like mentioning lunch. So that 2 a.m. wake-up you dread, your ancestors had a name for it. They just didn't think anything was wrong with it. Why did it disappear? Artificial light. Gas lamps, then electric bulbs, slowly compressed the night into something shorter and denser. Bedtime got pushed later because there was finally something to do after dark. The window for sleep got smaller and smaller. And the 2-part rhythm that used to fit comfortably inside 14 hours of darkness got squeezed into 7 or 8 until it collapsed into one solid block. Or at least, it was supposed to. Your body, though, might still be quietly trying to run the old program, even with none of the conditions that used to make it work. But here's the twist almost nobody talks about. When neuroscientist Jerome Siegel and his team wanted to test whether this 2-sleep pattern was some universal ancient default hardwired into everyone, they didn't read old letters. They went and lived with people who still sleep the way humans did before electricity existed at all. Hunter-gatherer groups like the Hadza in Tanzania, the San in Namibia, and the Tsimane in Bolivia. Communities with no electric lights, no clocks, no screens, no concept of bedtime the way you understand it. What they found surprised almost everyone, including some of Ekirch's supporters. These groups didn't show a clear, segmented sleep pattern at all. Mostly, they slept in a single block, roughly 6 to 7 hours, often going to bed several hours after sunset, once the temperature dropped, and waking before sunrise. No widespread first sleep, second sleep split. No long, candlelit middle-of-the-night chats. So which version is the real ancient default? The European diaries describing 2 sleeps, or the modern hunter-gatherers sleeping through in 1? Maybe the honest answer is both, depending on the night, the season, and how cold it got after dark. Because here's something else Siegel's research highlighted, something that might matter more than the number of sleep segments. These same groups, despite sleeping less than most modern sleep guidelines recommend, and despite having no mattresses, no blackout curtains, and bugs and animal sounds all around them, reported almost no insomnia. Less than 2% of people across all three groups described anything resembling the word. Compare that to industrialized populations, where complaints of chronic insomnia run into the double digits, sometimes well over 30%. Often less total sleep, far less anxiety about it. So if it's not really about how long you sleep, or even how broken up it is, what is it about? This is where another piece of research gets interesting, and it has nothing to do with candles, campfires, or how many hours anyone logged. Researchers led by Yuka Sasaki at Brown University were studying something called the first night effect, the well-documented fact that people sleep worse on their first night in a new place. A hotel room, a friend's spare bed, a tent on a camping trip, anywhere unfamiliar. They wanted to know why exactly, and what was actually happening inside the brain during that restless first night. Using brain scans, they found that during sleep in an unfamiliar environment, one hemisphere of the brain, usually the left, stayed measurably more alert than the other. Less deep sleep on that side, more responsiveness to outside sounds, like a faint creak or a car door. Almost like it was standing guard while the rest of the brain rested. This isn't unique to humans. Some birds do something similar, called unihemispheric sleep, letting one half of the brain stay semi-awake, with one eye literally open, to watch for predators while the other half sleeps deeply. Ducks at the edge of a group will angle their open eye outward, toward where danger is most likely to come from. Dolphins do something like it too, for a different reason, so they can keep surfacing to breathe and keep half their brain tracking the water around them. Humans don't go quite that far, but apparently, under the right conditions, part of your brain can still pull a version of night watch. Now think about what unfamiliar really meant to a brain shaped by hundreds of thousands of years, spent mostly outdoors, with no walls, no doors, no locks. New noises, new shadows, no idea what might be moving in the dark beyond the edge of the firelight. For most of human history, an unfamiliar night wasn't just inconvenient, it could be dangerous in a very literal, very physical sense. A brain that woke easily, that stayed half alert, that interrupted deep sleep to check on things, wasn't malfunctioning. It was the brain of someone who survived long enough to have descendants, and passed that same wiring on to you. Here's the part that should make you sit up a little. Your brain doesn't really know the difference between unfamiliar because there might be a predator outside the cave, and unfamiliar because you have a deadline tomorrow, or an unresolved argument from earlier, or a strange noise in the apartment above you. To the oldest parts of your brain, underneath all the language and logic, stress is stress. Vigilance is vigilance. A racing heart at 2 a.m. means the same thing it always did. And waking up with that heart already going a little fast, mind already cataloging problems before you're even fully conscious, that might just be the night watch, reporting for duty, because something, somewhere, registered as unresolved. So what do you do with that? There's a modern experiment that hints at just how reversible some of this might be. Sleep researcher Kenneth Wright at the University of Colorado sent a group of people camping for a week. No flashlights, no phones, nothing but natural daylight and natural dark. Within days, their internal clocks shifted on their own. They started falling asleep earlier and waking up earlier, lining up almost exactly with sunset and sunrise. Nobody trained them to do it. Their bodies just slid back into an old rhythm the moment the modern lighting disappeared. It didn't take generations. It took about a week. You're obviously not going to bring back 14-hour nights, or candlelight, or a small fire and someone to talk quietly with in the dark. Not most nights anyway. But maybe the goal was never to force your brain back into one unbroken block of sleep and panic every time it refuses to cooperate. Maybe the goal is simply to stop treating that wake-up like an emergency, the way your ancestors apparently didn't. Some of the oldest advice for this turns out to be the simplest. Don't reach for a screen. That's the modern equivalent of lighting every torch in the cave at once, telling your brain the watch is over, the danger has arrived, and full alertness is required immediately. Instead, stay in the dark. Let your eyes adjust to almost nothing, the way they would have for your entire ancestral history, long before any of this light existed. If your mind is doing what minds at 2 a.m. have apparently always done, running through unresolved things one by one, let it run for a few minutes instead of fighting it. Some people even keep a notebook by the bed now, an updated, low-light version of what those candlelit middle-of-the-night hours in Ekirch's diaries were probably for in the first place. A quiet space to process, before drifting back down into whatever comes next. Because that's maybe the strangest part of all of this. The thing that feels like the worst moment of your night, the lying awake, the racing thoughts, the creeping sense that something is wrong with you specifically, might be one of the oldest, most ordinary experiences a human brain has ever had. Not a malfunction, a holdover. A night watch that's been running quietly, generation after generation, for longer than language, longer than agriculture, longer than cities, longer than light itself, just waiting for you to stop fighting it. So tonight, when it's 3 in the morning and you're staring at the ceiling again, maybe don't reach for your phone. Maybe just lie there, in the dark, the way humans always have, for almost the entirety of their existence, and let your mind, doing the only job it ever evolved to do, finally finish its watch.